Yeah, I think it's should be an exciting race, and we're going to play a bunch of games in a short period of time. We've missed be 5 games when we come back, and they've got them all rescheduled in. So it's 14 games in about 30 some days, and
Oh,
I think
wow.
our guys are going to love it. They don't have to
Yeah.
practice; they
Yeah.
just
No
go through the hoops.
practice.
So it should be an exciting stretch run. Hopefully, we can get crank back up again and back into a groove quickly as we open up at Missouri State with a back-to-back right out of the gate.
And they're doing well this year, of course. Dana Ford's got them going. How do you feel on the back? What do you like now? So you've been around. So some of us Division II guys like Ben Jacobson, Kyle Green, and those guys, we used to play back-to-back Friday, Saturday, different opponents. Okay. How do you feel about the back-to-back, same opponents? What do you like about it, dislike about it? It's been fascinating to watch some of the results.
Yeah, it's a unique. Having the 5 days in between games is weird. Like you feel like you it's just not as intense. Like you get done with those 2, and then you got all this time to prepare, and it's just
one
different.
prep. It's one prep is all. Yeah,
one prep for the whole week. So you're playing the back-to-back same team. It's like you don't have as much to do to get ready. You watch it, and then you start to rewatch it almost. You almost trick yourself.
Yeah, you can.
You don't. We need to have this. We need to do this, and it's. So I don't know. I don't want to do it again, but for 1 year, it's fine. That second night of the back-to-back, I think, is unique too. Just how much do you change? Do you not change? If you won or you lost, do you want to tweak it this much if you did well, and vice versa if you lost? How much do you want to change, or do you just do it better? Like you said, I think you can overthink it if you really get into it too much.
I always thought that it was always easier to make changes when you lose. I think just by coach's nature, when things are going right, you're like, let's not mess with it, and let's just roll it out here. And it's my dog's barking in the background. Sorry about that. She's so tough. And when you look at this, as a coach, you're like, hey, we have a game plan that works. It just worked last night. Why are we messing with this? What do you think? And as you've made changes, do you feel like it's probably minor stuff like, hey, matchups, let's switch this matchup in our man-to-man. Or more technical stuff like let's change the way we guard screen and roll, or let's double the post. Those are bigger. They have a bigger impact on a defensive scheme. You know what I'm saying? Right. Do you find yourself little changes or big changes, or just staying the same?
We made very minor changes. We made all of our focus from the one night to the next was just about the effort and energy. Just, you're a little worn out from the game before, and just getting them kind of refocused, I guess. You got to get that motor going again to start this second game. And we've only had 2 of them, and fortunately in our first game in both of them, we played fairly well. So we went into that second game not wanting to change a ton, and make a lot of adjustments. But so that's why we made our focus just on, playing hard and competing and getting ready for that game too.
A good friend of mine, Gus Bradley, who's now the defensive coordinator for the Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders, he used to say, when you win a big game, make them eat crumbs, not cake. And, and that's what coaches try and do, right? Is we try and make them crumb eaters, like, hey, like, we're not that good. And I think that's as big a challenge as trying to scheme your way into beating a team with a little more talent. Now you've got a hell of a team at 13-0, and you've also got a starting center at the University of Minnesota, Liam Robbins. I can't imagine like where you guys would be with that kind of guy, because I believe he's an NBA talent. You had a heck of a guy there. Unfortunately, lost him to transfer, which is happening more and more, and something you guys certainly have to fight off. When you look at your players and you lose an excellent player, a starter, a guy you're depending on, in the spring, summer, how did you deal with a loss like that with your team? And, usually we rally the troops. Was that a good experience for your team? Was that a positive one? Or how did you deal with that, Darren?
Well, ever since we took over, we had a bunch of scholarships to get. And then each year you have graduation, you have injuries, you have transfers. So we take a little more of a positive approach about things. It's an opportunity for somebody, when you get an injury, a graduation, somebody, decides to leave. So You know, I think when you do it that way, your mindset stays where it needs to be, and that's to continue to move forward and you know, try to, you know, push forward with the goals that you have. And we were able to get a transfer ourselves. Darnell Brody came to us from Seton Hall, and you know, I think it's worked out well for us, and the guys are, you know, playing well together. We have great chemistry, and I think that's the important part at the end of the day, is just making sure your group and your culture is what you need it to be. So when those things come up and graduations happen, you can continue to, you know, sustain some level of success and consistency.
You know, it's interesting. And when you say culture, and you've really coached with some wonderful coaches, Greg McDermott at Creighton and Dana Altman, I think are the two guys. And you played for Eldon Miller, who was awesome. So you've had some strong mentors in my mind, you know, and guys you've worked with, which you've absolutely added value to them. But when you talk about culture and people, you know, if I'm a normal fan, do you agree culture is just your everyday, behaviors, decisions, habits, mentality, you know? And so when a coach talks about culture, you know, every culture is going to be unique in its own being. Like your personality is certainly different than Max or Greg McDermott or Dana Altman's or Eldon Miller's, right?
Yeah, I think that culture is exactly like, you know, the way your team communicates with one another, the way they communicate and interact with their community, their campus, you know, their coaching staff. So, you know, the relationships you have there, I think that, you know, really dictates kind of how everything flows within your group and your team is, you know, how do those guys all, you know, what do they talk about when they leave the practice floor, or, you know, what's that like, you know? And I think when those relationships are good, and there's a good trust level back and forth between not only teammates, but coaches. And I think everybody feeds off of that. And when you got a good environment like that, it's never perfect. But that's okay when it is kind of, everybody tosses around the family. When it is a family, it doesn't need to be perfect. It's just got to be a good environment. That's a trusting environment. And that's what we have. We have a bunch of good guys that, you know, all like being around each other. And because of that, I think we got a good locker room.
No doubt. You don't win till you win the locker room, do you? You know, I mean, you've got to have the locker room's got to have your back. You've got to have their back. And as you go forward, I think that really matters. And, you know, and it's funny you say it's not perfect. It's not perfect. I mean, every pro, even the toughest teams out there that, you know, we see as coaches and we admire and respect, you know, there's stuff going on, you know, I mean, and I always thought, like you talked about, operating within your community, you know, it's your campus community, the Des Moines community. There's a lot of different communities you're dealing with, the other sport teams, so to speak. And, you know, we always said, Chin Coleman always told me, Coach, mind right, game right. Mind right, game right. And he's right. If a kid was screwing up with his personal behavior, he's out partying, messing around, or if a kid's just hates a class and he's blowing off homework, so he's behind, it affects everything else they do. And oftentimes you don't realize that, you know, and but when you have the culture right, those things almost take care of themselves. Agree?
Yeah, when it comes from within, it's much easier as a coaching staff, like, because they're the ones around each other all the time. So, you know, when they're out on their own and things, you know, how are they communicating with each other? You know, how they at the gas station, you know, how do they treat people? And, you know, I think those things are so important. And it's something we talk about a lot is those interactions all matter, because you can't just pick and choose when you want to be a good person, when you want to be, you know, a guy that has a good work ethic or whatever it may be. It's either consistently good or it creeps back in and it starts to affect everything.
What did Pete Newell say? Discipline, personal discipline's like pregnancy. Either you have it or you don't. You know, like, hey, it's not a sometime thing. So I'm just curious. This just popped into my head because as you talked about your team and how they interact with each other, one of the things I found was, you know, the better we got, the more our guys paid attention to what the other games in the leagues. And when we weren't very good, or if our culture, well, you know, I was a head coach 24 years. So I'm going to tell you, sometimes you screw it up and the culture is not where you want it to be. And I always found it interesting that when our culture wasn't very good, our guys didn't know what was going on with the other teams in the league. Well, then as I got older, you know, I'm an old man now, as you got older, like I'd ask recruits, hey, did you watch our game the other night? You go, a guy would say that we signed. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, did you, did you see this, in the first quarter? He goes, no. I watched it on Instagram, which was the minute and a half clip we did after the game from our social media guy, which showed 4 freaking dunks and 2 block shots, right? And a 3. And I'm like, you didn't watch the game. How are your guys now? And how does that work? And have you found, as you guys have gotten better and better in these 3 years, they're more in tune to what's going on?